faced a lot of adversity, but we should be used to that by now. And I think they could just kind of outwork us a little bit, and that just can't be our excuse.
The lights inside TD Garden burned with a sharp intensity, and from the very first possession, it was clear this wasn't going to be just another WNBA regular season matchup. It was going to be a battle of wills, a fight for momentum, a showcase of how much grit and belief the Indiana Fever had carried with them on the road. And right at the center of it all was Caitlin Clark. Her presence felt even before she took her very first shot. The defense was waiting for her. The crowd was waiting for her. The moment was waiting for her. Connecticut threw Sheldon into the fire immediately, pressing up on Clark, keeping the pressure on, trying to deny her space. Tina Charles, the veteran, took the responsibility of guarding Aaliyah Boston, using every bit of experience, every bit of her polished arsenal to make things difficult in the paint. The Sun showed a high hedge on Clark's first ball screen, a sign of respect and fear all rolled into one. Clark gave it up, but Indiana didn't stop. The ball kept moving, zipping around in rotations, the Fever's identity on display. This was no longer the young, inexperienced roster that doubters dismissed months ago. This was a team that trusted the pass, trusted the cut, trusted each other. Boston met Charles head-on in the paint, and the collision was pure fire. Charles, a player with every move in her bag, tried to lean into her veteran craft, but Boston was relentless, blocking her clean and forcing a frustrated glance toward the officials. No whistle came, no sympathy either. Indiana's defense had set the tone. On the other end, Caitlin Clark still hadn't even taken a shot. The crowd was restless, sensing the anticipation of her first attempt. And then, finally, it came. A quick trigger, pure mechanics, smooth release. The ball splashed through, her very first attempt of the night finding the bottom of the net. The Fever bench leapt. The fans wearing blue and yellow roared. And even inside enemy territory, Clark's magic could not be muted. The rookie guard out of Iowa had arrived in Boston, and she was here to dictate the script. Clark flowed into the offense, feeding Hall with a perfect pass. Hall spun, elevated, and buried the shot with poise. The chemistry between the two was undeniable, a rhythm that came from trust and countless repetitions in practice. Moments later, Hall cut once more, threading the lane with precision, and Clark found her again. Another basket, another statement that Indiana's ball movement was alive and dangerous. On the defensive end, the Fever answered again. Nelson Adota tried to power inside, but Nalissa Howard was waiting, stuffing the attempt and letting out a roar that echoed across the arena. Howard, one of the most underrated engines of this Fever roster, was the heartbeat of their toughness, and tonight she was not going to back down from anyone. Indiana struck again with Hall spotting up from deep, splashing home another jumper. The Fever offense wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, striking in rhythm, cutting through Connecticut's defense with sharpness. And then, the storyline shifted to a different kind of narrative, the stories behind the players. Sophie Cunningham entered the floor, her energy like a spark waiting to ignite. Arie McDonald, a mid-season pickup who had been overlooked by so many teams, was now a crucial piece, carving her role out of sheer hustle and determination. These were not just names on a roster. They were pieces of a greater whole, fitting perfectly into the tapestry of a Fever team on the rise. When the game had settled into that tense middle stretch where every possession feels heavier, every cut sharper, every mistake magnified under the glaring lights. The noise inside TD Garden was alive, pulsing, restless as Connecticut tried to impose its will, but Indiana kept answering in ways that showed their maturity had grown. The last foul had been whistled on Lindsay Allen, a subtle turning point that gave Indiana just a sliver more breathing room to operate. Then it happened. Damiris. Dantas, patient, composed, the kind of veteran presence that doesn't rush when the moment swells. Tina Charles lunged toward her, trying to chase down the play, but Dantas waited just long enough. She let Charles fly by, took a steady dribble, and lined up her shot with elegance. The three-pointer left her hands as smoothly as if it were rehearsed 1,000 times, and when it splashed through the net, it wasn't just 3 points, it was a message. Dantas wasn't going to be rattled, not here, not against Charles, not with the spotlight this bright. The commentators chuckled, calling the move corny, but the truth was there was nothing corny about it. It was poise under pressure, a demonstration that Indiana's supporting cast was just as vital to the storyline as their superstar rookie. And then came Caitlin Clark again. The crowd leaned forward, because with Clark, anticipation always builds like a rising tide. She worked against Sheldon this time, and what makes her so dangerous isn't just her shooting range or her passing vision, it's that deceptive first step. With a sudden slice, she darted into the lane, and Sheldon never stood a chance. One moment she was squared up defensively, the next she was chasing shadows. Clark exploded forward, quick and fast, rising with force as the rim approached. The finish was smooth, the crowd split between gasps and cheers, and Connecticut could only shake their heads. But brilliance is never without its flaws. Clark had already been responsible for 3 of Indiana's 4 turnovers in the game, a reminder that her daring style comes with risks. Every gamble doesn't pay off. Yet what defines Clark isn't the turnover count. It's the fact that she keeps coming, keeps attacking, keeps believing in her ability to change the entire rhythm of the contest. And when her teammates see that fire, they feed off it too. Indiana's ball movement hummed again, the ball zipping inside. Mitchell showed her patience, gathering herself in traffic, pulling the defense in before feeding it back out. The rhythm of this Fever offense wasn't about one player forcing shots. It was about facilitation, about understanding that when Aaliyah Boston touched the ball, good things usually followed. Boston, the reigning Rookie of the Year, played like a veteran beyond her years. She read the cutters perfectly, faked a handoff with a subtle dip of the shoulder, then threaded a pass that split defenders and landed right where Kelsey Mitchell needed it. It was a masterclass in reading the floor, and it reminded everyone watching that Indiana's interior game was every bit as dangerous as Clark's perimeter wizardry. There had been stretches earlier this season when Clark was sidelined with injuries, and in those moments it was Boston who had been asked to step up, to bring the ball up, to orchestrate possessions, to be the anchor Indiana desperately needed. Those scars of responsibility had carved strength into her game. And now, even with Clark healthy and in rhythm, Boston still carried herself like a commander of the court. Kelsey Mitchell, too, played with a fire that seemed to ignite at just the right moments. Her pull-up jumper, silky smooth, drew applause even from fans who weren't wearing Fever colors. Mitchell had long been the unsung hero of this franchise, grinding through the darker years, carrying the weight of losses, never letting her effort falter. Now, in this brighter chapter, her game was flourishing alongside Clark and Boston, and the Fever's identity was blossoming with her. Then came one of the most brilliant sequences of the night. Boston caught the ball at the high post, and even before it settled into her hands, her eyes were already darting, scanning, anticipating. She knew where Natasha Howard was moving before. Howard herself even fully committed to the cut. In one fluid motion, Boston fired a laser pass, threading it through defenders and finding Howard in stride. Howard caught it clean, rose strong, and finished at the rim. It wasn't just 2 points. It was poetry. It was telepathy. It was Boston proving she was more than a big body inside. She was the heartbeat of Indiana's offensive vision. Clark followed with her own brilliance. A heavy hesitation dribble froze the defense. She knew exactly how to bait them, how to make them pause just long enough for the window to open. The crowd held its breath. Defenders leaned the wrong way, and in that instant, Clark slipped past, orchestrating chaos like only she can. It was a reminder that her game wasn't just about shooting from the logo, it was about manipulating time and space, making defenders dance to a rhythm they didn't want to hear. And yet, even amid these flashes of brilliance, the Fever weren't flawless. Their coach barked reminders from the sideline. "They're too comfortable, too comfortable." The words weren't said once. They were repeated again and again, like a drumbeat meant to wake up the defense, because comfort in a game like this is deadly. Connecticut had weapons, and if they were allowed to find rhythm, they would punish Indiana. That's why physicality mattered. That's why contests mattered. Kelsey Mitchell embodied that urgency, hounding her assignment, bumping cutters, getting into bodies, making sure every touch came with resistance. She wasn't just scoring. She was embodying the challenge her coach demanded. Be physical, make them uncomfortable, force them to feel the weight of every possession. The game wasn't just about the scoreboard anymore. It was about adjustments, resilience, pride. Every trip down the floor was a chance to prove something, to declare intent, to remind the opponent that nothing would come easy tonight. And then the camera panned to Caitlin Clark again, the star at the center of this new WNBA orbit. A murmur spread through the crowd because beyond tonight's game, there was something else looming on the horizon. Fans already knew the announcement. Clark had been confirmed as a participant in the league's three-point shooting competition. It was as if the universe itself knew that her stardom couldn't be confined to just 40 minutes of game action. She was going to be a show on her own, a spectacle that fans couldn't resist. But here, inside TD Garden, the spectacle was happening live. The dribbles, the cuts, the passes, the battles in the paint. It was all the game had entered its defining stretch, where every basket felt like it might tilt the balance of destiny. Kelsey Mitchell set the tone first, pulling up with confidence, the ball finding Sophie Cunningham at the arc. One release, one splash. The Garden grew restless. When Mitchell came down again, she needed no elaborate setup, no extra passes. She trusted Cunningham, second three, same result. Indiana's rhythm was flowing through her veins, and suddenly, what looked like hesitation turned into momentum. Caitlin Clark felt it too. She turned the corner, slicing into the defense, and when pressure collapsed around her, she went behind the back with a flash of brilliance. The ball found Natasha Howard, who calmly faced up. Howard was a complete package, able to post, able to drive, able to rise and fire. And in this moment, she was exactly what Indiana needed. Steady, reliable, undeniable. The Fever refused to be pushed off the glass. Missed shots turned into second chances, effort turning into opportunity. And again, Cunningham was there, already confident, already in rhythm, burying another jumper. The Fever bench erupted. This wasn't just one player getting hot. This was trust. This was chemistry. This was a team willing to swing the ball and believe the right hands would finish the job. Connecticut pushed back, refusing to fold. A double team came.